Welcome back to Boss Uncaged Podcast. So today's show is ironically special show for me because not every day I get an opportunity to interview like an actual blood relative, family member that's like, I think we probably share probably like 15 the same chromosomes. If you do a 23andMe and this dude will probably be like neck and neck, right? Because his dad is my uncle. So um, I think I always give whoever I'm interviewing a particular guest name. So in this particular episode, I'm going to deem you the model boss. So the floor is yours. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit more about who you are and what you do, Daniel?
Hey, what's going on, man? Thanks for having me. Uh, well, like you said, my name is Daniel. At the moment, I'm model. Um, it's a little dream come true. You know what I mean? It's a good job to have. A lot. It's a job that I feel like a lot of people would you want to do. Seeing as how many people hit me up trying to get on with it and stuff like that. You know. So yeah, it's a pretty good job. You know what I mean? Pretty easy. Like put on clothes and make it happen. Be confident.
Nice. So yeah, I mean, I remember growing up, like what I'm saying. So I remember you when you were younger than my son. So like I remember when you was like 6 years old, 7 years old.
Hmm.
Like who would have thought you'd have been modeling? So like I mean, like how like
Yeah,
so like if you could define yourself in like 3 to 5 words, what would those 3 to 5 words be?
definitely. I would say artist, um, strong-minded, uh, determined,
Mm.
uh, creative, and outgoing.
Nice, nice. Well, yeah, I mean, I think determined comes from your genome. I mean, I think everyone with last name Grant is probably stubborn and hard headed as hell in that generation. Like even my son is just as stubborn and hard headed. It's like Jesus. Like, can we get one generation that's not that stubborn or hard headed? It's genetically ingrained, man, for sure, for sure. So I mean, let's just talk about like your journey from it. I mean, obviously, saying you grew up in New York, right? I mean, I think you're in
Mhm,
Long Island right now. Like, how does like a New York kid get into like the modeling game? Like, how does that transition, right? Because I mean, obviously, you've been in
mhm,
New York for a minute. You know what it's like on the block.
mhm,
You got kids probably around the
mhm,
corner pushing weight. You probably got other
mhm.
people that's dying to play basketball. You got other people that's saying I'm gonna be a billionaire, and then you step into the modeling scene. So like, let's talk about that journey for a minute.
That's a really good question. To be honest, like growing up, like it was a big transition because it's like something that nobody out here is really doing at all, especially not in Long Island. Like maybe like because everything I do mostly is in the city, like Manhattan, Brooklyn, around that. But in Long Island, this is not like a thing that people are, what I mean, doing. Like you said, like people doing like, you know, the dealing and you know what I mean, sports and what I mean, all the common routes that you would think of. But this one was like this route is for them is a lot different. And at first, for me getting into it, like I would say like people was like funny about it, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you know what I mean? Because the crowd is different, everything, you know what I mean? The vibe is different. But for me, it was like well, the main thing is like it's a different crowd. You know what I mean? Like you're not modeling with these drug dealers and you know what I mean? It's very different. So a lot of people like from where I live, they would like try to judge that. You know what I mean? Like just like that whole like going that different way. You know what I mean? But then at first when I started, people were trying to like shoot it down. You know what I mean? Because I had asked, I put a poll out and I put it on Twitter, and it was three. Um, there was three options, right? And the question was, should I start? Should I try modeling? Right? And the answers were yes, no, and don't even try.
Mhm.
Yes was the least chosen answer. You know what I mean? Like more people said, don't even try. You know what I mean? Than like a yes.
Mhm.
So yeah, but then like I'm saying, people asking, yo, I got a cousin asking for a friend. You know what I mean? And like I've done uh, a job with somebody. Not gonna go into detail like who it was for and stuff like that, because yeah, but he was a younger guy and he's from New Jersey, I believe, and he grew up in like the same thing, New York, a different crowd. And his friends obviously were like shooting it down, like trying to, you know what I mean, like, oh, that's, you know what I mean, fruity, whatever, you know what I mean? That's not tough, you know, or whatever. And what he let it get to him, you know, and he had like a whole different attitude during the, you know what I mean, during the job, and you know what I mean, like being unprofessional, trying to, you know, and he's a kid, you know what I mean? He was like 17 years old, you know, so, but he never got a job after that, you know, like trying to impress them all. And I was trying to give him advice, like telling him like your friends, like they wish they could do this. You know what I mean? Like you're getting paid by designers to wear their clothes and look good in it. And your friends are paying the most, you know what I mean? Doing the most, stealing and da-da-da, trying to get the same designer and tag them when they post it. You know what I mean? Trying to get some, you know, credibility or notoriety or whatever from, you know, attention from these designers, hoping, you know. And so it's like, people, you know, people could be jealous, you know what I mean, in that, you know what I mean, that aspect. So, you know, it was a little transition getting into it, and you know, just yeah, it's just different. But it's a little difficult to get into, but it's not like that difficult. You just gotta, it's kind of one of those things, you just know the right people, and it kind of just goes from there.
Nice. So with that, obviously you always hear about like the nightmare stories, and you always hear about like the positive stories, but the reality is probably like way more nightmare stories about the behind the scenes of like modeling, what goes on behind the curtain or whatever. So in your instance, like what's the worst experience that you've ever experienced in the modeling game that obviously, you came out of it. I mean, it affected you, but it didn't change your outcome.
All right. For me, it was probably when I first had started. I had a mother agency. So I had an agent, but it's a small agency. You know what I mean? What they do is, a mother agency, what they do is they build up your portfolio, you know, teach you like small things like, you know, have you take practice chest shots and stuff like that, how to take photos, walking, stuff like that. So, and they also their job is also get you placed with bigger agencies, like worldwide agencies. So when I first started, I was going to, I don't want to say the name of the agency, you know what I mean? But it's a worldwide agency, right? And very, you know, very well-known big name agency. So that was my first time. They wanted to see me. So I went in, and the men's director, like, this is my first time going to a casting like that, right? At one of those meetings. So my agent, he stayed, like, I think he was downstairs, right? It was one of these suites, you know, so it's like a hotel building or whatever, building. So the men's director, he asked me like simple questions, you know, the basic stuff. And then he asked me to see my phone. Sorry, it's kind of much. Yeah, then he asked me to see my phone. Like, he said, I wanted to see how you take pictures, right? So I'm thinking like, this probably, you know, protocol is normal. You know what I mean? He wants to see like the angles, like how I take my photos, like if I know my angles, you know what I mean? So that's how I thought of it. So pass me the phone, gallery, and he's like scrolling. You know what I mean? And this is like through my whole gallery, you know what I mean? And scroll, and then he would stop on like a video of like me and a girl, and he'd be like, "Oh, that's not nice." You know what I mean? Like just saying like little, you know what I mean? Like stopping on all the, you know what I mean? Like the stuff that you know what I mean? That's not supposed to be for the public kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I'm like peeking over, like, what, you know what I mean? Like, what's this? And people at the table over peeking over and stuff. He's scrolling through the phone. So I get the phone back, right? And then at the end of that, it was done after that pretty fast. So I go back downstairs and I'm telling my agent, he was like, "Oh yeah, how'd it go?" Because the people, they really wanted to see me, right? And he was like, "Yeah, how did it go?" I'm like, "I'm not sure. I think it went good." And he's like, "What did he ask you?" And I told him everything. When I told him about the phone and how he was looking through the gallery thing, he was like, because at first I wasn't thinking like, you know, anything really of it, you know what I mean? Because it was my first time. But then when I told my agent what had happened, he like stopped and was like the eyebrow up and was like, you know, that's strange. You know what I mean? And then that's when I was like, oh, this is, you know what I mean? And after that, like the same director messaging me, you know what I mean? Like flirty, you know what I mean? Stuff like that, you know? So it was like, it's like same way, like especially with this, it's a lot of course, it's a lot of homosexual men. You know what I mean? It's a lot of homosexual men, and it's like the same way like women can like in a lot of jobs, like you know what I mean, get to the top through, you know what I mean, that
Yeah.
type of way. Like it's the same way like with guys in this type of industry. Like you could, you know what I
Gotcha.
mean. A lot of people they flipped in and jump through hoops for you know what I mean these names and these people that could put them in better positions. And it definitely, you know what I mean, it definitely takes you somewhere. But long story short, I never got picked up by that agency. You know what I mean? And you know what I mean? Stay true. Stay true.
Got it. So I mean, that's definitely crazy. I mean, it kind of goes to like behind the scenes to where but you don't know until like you in that spot in that zone. And what you're saying is pretty much is like the dude is hitting on you, much like dudes hit on females, and he's trying to say for
Mm-hmm.
you to be able to get ahead, you're gonna have to bless him off in some kind of situation to kind of climb up that ladder. And you ain't think
Mm-hmm.
nothing of it, and then you're just like, nah, you ain't gonna roll like that. So because you didn't roll like that, you didn't get
Mm-hmm.
that job and opportunity, which is hella fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, unfortunately,
Yeah.
like that's the world that we live in, right? So, I mean, just talk
Mm-hmm.
about like your journey for a little bit more, right? Because I mean, obviously, I always ask this question, like you always hear about the perception of an overnight success. Somebody may be seeing you on Instagram right now. I'm like, yo, he doing Louis V. Holy shit! Wow! Oh my God! This is my cousin. This is my uncle. This is my brother. This is my man. Everybody and their mom know you now, right? But
Mm-hmm.
in reality, like how long did it take you? And then keep in mind, I know you're still in your 20s, right? But how long did it take you to get
Mm-hmm.
from the time that you put out that, hey, should I model and people are hating to actually modeling for the big name brands now?
All right. It kind of I feel like when it comes to like the bigger the bigger brands and stuff like that, it kind of depends who you ask. Because at first, like my first I had two shoots, like my first two actual like shoots for like a company was in the same day.
Okay.
The one of them was for uh, a little boutique. This one had the mother agency, the first mother agency. So this is like for a little boutique in California. So it's like a vintage store where they sell like used clothes, new clothes, but for like high price, you know. So it's for them in California. They're called Tried and True. So I did that, and that's like nobody's watching for that. Nobody's heard of that before. And then the same day, I had another shoot for Billionaire Boys Club, and that's like a streetwear, you know what I mean, urban, but it's like it's up there, like it's known, but it's not, like Kanye say, like it's not Ralph though, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
not Louis Vuitton, it's not. So for a lot of people, when they see like the Billionaire Boys Club thing, that was like, oh my, you know what I mean? That was like a big thing for them. But as far as like from myself, it was like, oh, that's pretty big, you know what I mean? And there's also, the real designers like Louis Vuitton, you know what I mean? Calvin Klein, stuff like that. And I had never done anything like that. But at the time I had like long hair. And when I first started, uh, you wouldn't see urban doing designer.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So you wouldn't see a Black person with dreads or braids or anything doing a designer like that unless you was already famous.
Mm-hmm.
So my agent, he was a black man. One of them was black and one of them was Spanish. It was two of them. And he was telling me that, like being straight up with me, he was like, they'll take a white boy over you any day. And he kept asking me if I would cut my hair. He was like, if you cut your hair, you get like a Caesar, you look expensive, you know what I mean? That's what you do, these high end, da, da, da. But for me, like it's always like I'm not doing anything I don't want to do. You know what I mean? And I like my hair, you know what I mean? So I wasn't cutting it for nobody. So I kept doing like the Billionaire Boys Club. I did like a handful of shoots with them. And when I finally, on my own terms, decided to cut my hair, literally right when I cut my hair, that's when urban became the new thing for designer. And then you had to have dreadlocks to do Gucci. You had to have, you know what I mean? Like just all these different features, you know what I mean? Like, and it just became very inclusive after that, you know what I mean? So then I went through the whole short hair phase again, you know what I mean? Then I started growing it out again. But I would say it probably took from then to like Louis Vuitton, it probably took about like 2 years. Like, and that's also with COVID slowing a lot of things down because well, maybe I'll say two, I give it 3 years, give it 2, 3 years. Yeah. And that's including COVID because COVID really like shut like especially like the fashion and everything and shut it down for like basically a year because I was literally supposed to go to Italy. I was speaking with somebody from Versace, and I was working at the time. And this is right before COVID hit, and they're in Europe, and they're like, "Oh, Dontel will love you, da 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 da. You know what I mean? You need to come to we want you in Italy." And then as right after that, like the week later, COVID hits, and Europe was hit the hardest with COVID at that time, and then everything was shut down, and then that whole thing just like flew out the window. But as of recent, everything's been like picking up, you know what I mean? So that's what, after post-COVID, well, not post because it's still going on, but, started to die down a little bit. That's when the Louis Vuitton, stuff like that, New York Fashion Week, you know what I mean, came like back in.
So is that normal? Like, I mean, you're talking about you've been in the game 3 years and, you pretty much went from like a no-name brand out in Cali to Louis V in 3 years. Is that something that's normal that happens in fashion?
I feel like it really depends on representation because when you're a represented model, it like when you have an agency, it's really has a lot to do with your agency. So like you could have an agent that's not like a big name, but they're well connected. So then that means that these brands, they look to these agencies for castings and for their models, so it's like if the agency has those connections and everything, then they could put you, send you to a lot of different, clients. But then if they don't have that, then it's going to be, you should be like, you're going to be sitting on a shelf, you know what I mean? So it was kind of like going back between that. After my first mother agency, I was a free agent for a little while, but I still had made connections from the mother agency. And then I went to Iceland for the Billionaire Boys Club again. And when I got back from Iceland is when I got a new agency. And things has been like rolling from there. But I would say, yeah, it really, you can't really put a time on it because you could be, with this, you could probably be an overnight sensation if you have the right, representation.
Nice.
And right look, you know what I mean?
Gotcha. So let's talk about some time traveling for a minute, right? I mean, obviously, like you're in your early 20s, right? So if you can go back, let's say back in your adolescence, back in high school, back in middle school, and before you even kind of gotten to the stage where you at diving into modeling, is there one time that you think that you can go back and whisper something in your ears to kind of change the outcome of where you are to make it happen a lot faster?
Yeah. I would definitely I don't know what time I would go to like for it to like really stick because I was little, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Little off, and like during high school and stuff like that. But I definitely would have went back and told myself to focus, to like, to not even to really focus, but to appreciate myself because a long time ago, some while ago, I really didn't have like I really didn't appreciate myself, like my own life, you know what I mean? Like, because of the surroundings, you know what I mean? People don't care about themselves. My friends, they're doing stuff that shows they don't care about their lives. They don't care about themselves. You know what I mean? If they don't care about themselves, they really don't care about you. So they, got you in all types of situations, you know what I mean? Risking your life or, day to day, stuff like that. So it's like, then you see the news and how people think of you, you're young, you're black, you're nothing, you're good for jail, you did it. So you start to kind of carry that with yourself, you know what I mean? At least I did, you know what I mean? Thinking like, it don't matter, you know what I mean? My life, I could die young, it don't matter. You know what I mean? Nobody's gonna care. But once I got out of that mindset, that's when I really started to try to do things for myself and like carry on life and actually, you know what I mean, to do things to make myself happy instead of just living for, the next day and who cares, whatever. It's not gonna last that long. You know what I mean? Like I'm here for the good time, not a long time kind of thing. So now it's like I'm here for good. You know what I mean? I feel like I'm you know what I mean. I'm 23 now, so it's like 'cause before I used to, I don't know why, but I used to not think I was going to 18. You know what I mean? So then I hit 18 and I was like a big goal. And then 19, it was like, okay, then 20, 21, 20, you know what I mean? So it's like, okay, that I'm not even playing with that idea anymore, you know? So I think that um just value yourself, you know what I mean? Knowing that you could be, you know what I mean, you're infinite, you could be a lot, you know what I mean? You could do anything you want, you know, that really pushed me
Right.
to keep going, you know what I mean, do better for myself.
Right. Very nice. So, well, my next question kind of like it's a funny question because obviously, you know, like I know your dad, right? I've known him longer than you've known him, so it's just
True.
so. So the next
True.
question is like, do you come from an entrepreneurial family, an entrepreneurial background? And as long as I've known my uncle, that dude has been selling water to the well forever.
Yes.
So
Yeah. No, no, definitely. Like, you know, you really know. Since I can remember, he's been a hustler. Like, not a hustler like, oh, he's selling crack and nothing like that, but like an entrepreneur, like you said, like just yesterday, we was in a car and he was like, oh, um, he was on the phone with somebody. He was like, oh, that's the manager of the store across the street. He's about to give me like these really good prices, and I'm like going, I'm gonna sell it for more. You know what I mean? He's about to sell it to me for like such and such money, and I'm about to sell it for this and this, and then you got to put this type of price on it because then people think it's trash. If you put it for too low, da da da. You know, and like I remember when I was little, his big thing was the Timberlands, selling Timberlands. Yeah, we had like me and my brother, we had every pair of Timberlands, every color. You know what I mean? Like we were so sick of in coats, jackets, pants. You know what I mean? Hats, book bags, anything you could think of, Timberland. And like I remember like all the teenagers, because I was a kid, all the teenagers and men with it. My dad would have the whole basement closet full of Timbs, his trunk full of Timbs, and all these people come around and, oh, where's your dad? And you know what I mean, buying these shoes from him, you know what I mean? Like, and I see that he would make a lot of money off of it. And then I would just see him do that with like so many different things growing up. Like it went from the Timbs to the pastries, and when that was a thing for a little bit, then he started doing Harley Davidson stuff before it was even, you know what I mean, popular. He was like, oh, I'm telling you this because he's in the city a lot. He sees people in Manhattan and what they're wearing, and you know what I mean, the people with the money and what, you know what I mean, Converse and all that stuff. And so yeah, definitely he's the guy that he definitely knows how to sell water to a I don't know, to the ocean. I don't know, like you said, water to the well. Like,
yeah, it's crazy.
Definitely that guy.
You think that was a factor to becoming who you are right now?
For sure, because it was never like I felt like I could just do or had to do one thing. You know what I mean? Because he had his job. You know what I mean? He had his job, and then he had all these things he would do on the side. You know what I mean? So it's like it really raised me to like believe in more than one hustle. You know what I mean? Like I don't have to just do this. And I feel like that may have made me indecisive. You know what I mean? Because I was just talking about this the other day. I'm very indecisive when it comes to like choosing one thing that I want to pinpoint to stay with. You know what I mean? Like say like college. You know what I mean? Like trying to pinpoint one thing that I want to do for the rest of my life. You know, because for myself, I feel like I could do a lot of things. You know what I mean? If I were to read this book, then I'm gonna learn that book, and I could do this. If I wanted to be an electrician, I could be an electrician. If I wanted to be, this. If I want to work my hands, you know what I mean? I feel like there's like no limit on what I could do, so it's hard for me to find something that this is it. You know what I mean? This is my one talent. This is what I'm gonna, horn in on. Like it's nothing like that. It's like I feel like very all around talented, so it's like hard to choose one thing. And I don't know if that has anything to do with him, but I know, he never chose just one thing to do, you know what I mean? So
Nice.
it might have been.
So let's talk about like how currently how you juggling like your modeling work life with like your family life. How do you juggle that?
It's pretty good. I feel like with the modeling, it leaves the thing with the modeling is not really you're on anybody's schedule like that. You know what I mean? It's kind of like an open schedule. So with the family time, I really do value family time and everything. So I try to, you know what I mean, like as much as I can, like take the dog for a walk, you know, talk to the family, play with my little brother, you know, stuff like that. So it never really, I don't feel that it ever really conflicts because the modeling doesn't take me away for, you know, too long. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm in London right now. Hopefully, you know what I mean? But it's not like, you know what I mean, I'm overseas, you know, staying away for a long period of time at the moment. So it's been pretty good. And I've also tried to include the family in it as well. Like my dad, my little brother, I've been trying to like, you know, because there's jobs you can get with modeling that they want like certain shoes for like the father, you know, little brother, like a little family shoe, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. So I've been trying to like include them as well, especially my little brother since, you know what I mean, he's a little pretty boy, you know what I mean? He got, you know what I mean, he got the look. So he could definitely do it as well.
Nice, nice. So what's up with your sister and your older brother?
Oh well, yeah, that's everything to do with them. They're David, well, especially David, he's like on his own, he's just on his own thing. Like he's always been though. David's just been like just to himself kind of guy. You know what I mean? Just so he's getting into clothes now. Surprisingly, like he really pulled that one. I don't know, like he's making clothes. Um, so he's on his little entrepreneurial stuff too. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
you know everybody's been investing in themselves. Like I invested into paint, cameras. You know what I mean? Like a lot of artistic stuff, clay, all types of things. And he's investing into clothes. I know he was investing into shoes before to like resell and stuff like that, but I'm not sure. I know he has a lot of them, but I don't know how serious he's taking that. But I know he's taking the selling clothes very serious right now, like making designs and being a little businessman and stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, the way it
And
sounds,
Diamond, she's working and everything. She's working, she's doing good, like making her own money. You know what I mean? She's the youngest, you know, making her own money, everything, like skateboarding, all type of stuff. You know,
nice.
she's young,
Sounds
so
like
she's
sooner or
still
later you're gonna be wearing your brother's clothes on runway. It sounds like.
wearing his clothes. Yeah. You know what I mean? Hopefully, that's what I want to see. That's
Nice.
what I want to see.
Cool, cool. So I mean, you dropped a little ad lib about like books before. So like this next question is a 3-part question. It's just about books, right? So the first part is
Mhm.
like, what books do you remember reading, like leading up to where you are right now? The second part of the question is like, what books or audiobooks are you actively listening to right now? And the third part of this question is like, are you planning to or thinking about potentially writing a book about your business, about your life, and what you've done so far?
Okay. So when it comes to books, um, I'm not gonna lie, I haven't been reading as of lately. I haven't really been. I've been reading little tidbits of like research. I started like reading stuff like that, like articles, but not really a certain book. The book that I was getting into was called A Star in the West.
Mm.
It doesn't really have to do anything with well, it kind of has something to do with me personally, but not really. I mean, let me just tell you about it then. So it's called A Star in the West. It's written by Elias Budanon. He was the second president of Congress, I believe they called it. So there was like 14 presidents before Washington, but they all served because Washington was the first president under the what is it? I forget what article it was, the bill or the Declaration of Independence or something like that. But he was the first president that, when he started serving the 4-year terms, and all before that, there was a 1 year part. 1 year apiece. So the second out of the 14 before Washington, he wrote a book about this. It's a controversial book. You know what I mean? It's about the natives of America, right? And the true identities of the natives of America. And it's about literally it's a controversial book. It's like it's about he says that the natives of he describes the natives of America, right? And he describes them as not how we see them today at all. Like he talks about the Smithsonian being a lie, you know what I mean, being,
Mm.
uh cursed by the pen of the white man, and that honestly, he was writing that the Native America are of the lost tribes of Israel, right? And that how history and everything was written against them because of a feeling of inferiority, because they're so like naturally skilled at everything, you know what I mean, that they could carry on war, they were smart, you know what I mean, all that. Yeah, but it's a pretty deep book. It's a pretty deep book, like going back into history. And I feel like he's a pretty credible resource just because of who he was. You know what I mean? Who he was in history. Like he wasn't some random guy. You know what I mean? He was actual, president of Congress. You know what I mean? Like, and this is before Washington. So that's before a lot of. Uh, we don't really in school. They don't really teach history. You know what I mean? They kind of start at Washington. You know what I mean? Just like they start Black history at slavery. So it's like I felt it was kind of like empowering, you know what I mean, to know stuff like that and to read stuff like that about how basically we view, like I was saying before, how we view ourselves, you know what I mean, and we look at ourselves bad and we think we come from nothing, and the people we come from are stupid and taking, you know what I mean, just taking advantage of all types of things, but it's like we really come from power, so I would say that would go along with helping me like empowering myself, I mean, thinking about, you come from greatness, you know what I mean? You come from a great people. So, it's great to see you kind of thing. And then the second part, you said,
what books are you reading now? And then the third part, are you planning on writing any books?
All right, yeah. So I said I wasn't really reading any books right now. And for the third part, I always did want to write a book. Yeah, I always did want to write a book. I think just about just my life, like everything. I feel like I've lived a pretty interesting life. You know what I mean? A lot of things people don't know. Yeah. I feel like I lived a pretty, even for like a young age and everything. I feel like I lived a pretty interesting. Like I have some things I can lend to people, you know what I mean? Some good words, experiences, learning experiences.
Nice. I mean, with that, so I mean, coming from the past, moving into the present, or now moving into the future, I mean, where do you see yourself 20 years from now?
Happy. That's my main thing. Like I would always want to say like rich. Like just even now I want to say like rich, but before any of that, like realistically happy. Because people being billionaires, killing themselves, and all type, what I mean, just miserable. So I would say, yeah, happy. She's definitely working on finding peace of mind and what actually makes me happy, because money don't really make people happy. You know what I mean? Possessions don't really make people happy. Like family, you know what I mean? Like that's like really big for me. Like family, just seeing everybody that I love doing well. You know what I mean? Everybody's taken care of, financial freedom, stuff like that. Like freedom, you know what I mean? That's a big thing, like freedom, just financial freedom, just, I don't know, emotional freedom, like all that. Growing my own food, stability, what's the word? Self-sufficient, I guess. You know what I mean? I want to be very self-sufficient, because this world, you never know, this government, all that stuff going on. I don't know. I want to be farming. You know what I mean? That's where I really see myself. I see myself on a beach in Trinidad, living a very simple life. 20 years from now. Maybe off the grid. But definitely after doing something of importance, like I don't want to be forgotten. I want to do something that's going to be at least like, if it's like from giving words of encouragement, or you know what I mean? It's like something like that. I want to leave like a legacy and then just get off the grid,
Very nice. So, I mean, that's a solid segue for like, words of insight, word of wisdom, right? So if you had an opportunity to talk to a kid that's in Brooklyn or Queens, Bronx, Staten Island, Long Island, anywhere in the tri-state that's potentially, let's say, fresh into high school, 14, 15 years old, like what words of wisdom would you give to them to kind of help them push through the hurdles that you've conquered to move forward to their future successes?
It would have to be basically just to, I know this sounds very, because this is something like I like to like really get into, but I'm trying to simplify it. It's basically like to stay true because you know what makes you happy. You know what I mean, like the peer pressure and all that stuff. A lot of people find themselves living lives that they don't really want to be living. You know what I mean? Like I've, been around the most gangsters, you know what I mean, killers, and then they get drunk and cry to me about how they never thought they'd be living like this. You know what I mean? That they don't want to live this life. They don't want, you know what I mean? They don't want to live. And these are people that everybody's looking up to. You know what I mean? And they're literally telling me that they look up to me because I don't look up to them. You know, they're like, you do you and you're happy with yourself. You know what I mean? You don't look to anybody for like, approval. You know what I mean? When they smoke this, smoke, I'm like, I want a natural high. You know what I mean? And like, hey, let's go do this, go. You know what I mean? It was like never really peer pressure for me. Like I was always standing on, I'm gonna do what I want to do, what I'm comfortable with doing. When you know what I mean. So it's like if I ever did anything, it's because it wasn't peer pressure. It was myself. But I would say that's a big thing, and to remember the kid in you. You know what I mean? I feel like that took me back a lot because that's when I started to get back into painting because I started to think about who was I as a kid? You know what I mean? Where did I see myself as a kid? And I feel like when you get older, you start to forget about those things and you start to feel like you can't do it anymore, like you've outgrown it, or you know what I mean, that you're too old to be thinking like that, or you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like you're not, like I used to love drawing and painting as a kid. So it was like, why, you know what I mean? And then I started doing it again as older, and I loved it. You know what I mean? I still loved it. I still love, you know what I mean? So I would say, remember who you was as a kid, and you know what I mean, how you feel about yourself, looking at yourself as a kid, you know what I mean? Because then you'll really start to see a lot of times like who you really are, remember who you really are, So I think that's like a big one. That's trying to simplify it, you know what I mean?
That's real. That's definitely real. So, I mean, with that being said, how can people find you online? Like, I mean, what's your social media handles?
Yeah, my main thing is Instagram at prophetic Daniel. Prophetic _ Daniel. So as long as you know how to spell prophetic and Daniel, you got it. Well, _ Daniel, you got it.
Nice.
Prophetic _ Daniel.
Cool. So I got a couple of bonus questions going into the bonus round for you, right? I mean, obviously, like you said, you're 23, right? And I think like anyone that from the outside and looking in, you've accomplished a lot, right? I mean, the fact that you went from not modeling to starting to model to where you're modeling for like household brands, right? So with that journey and everything else in life that's happened in the first 23 years, right? What is your greatest achievement to date?
Greatest achievement. Being alive, because I feel like if I would have stayed with the mindset that I had before growing up, I wouldn't be here now. You know what I mean? Especially like, because growing up, at least people fought hands, you know what I mean? That was the thing. We love, you know what I mean? Every day I was slap boxing, you know what I mean? After class, and it was innocent, it was fun, you know what I mean? But now these kids is 14, 15 years old, they just shooting each other. You know what I mean? Like, I can't tell you the last time I've seen like a fight. You know what I mean? I used to record fights all the time, during high school. I used to be the guy, you know what I mean? Yeah, I was the guy, you know what I mean? Like, you didn't have the official video until you had mine, but now it's none of that. It's literally, I'm coming to your house, I'm shooting it up, and they're shooting up houses, you know what I mean? Like, so I feel like that's probably my biggest accomplishment is still being here because I had to make some right decisions down the line, I had to make some good decisions, preserve my life. So that's a big one for me.
Okay. Got another bonus question for you. If you could spend 24 hours with anyone, dead or alive, uninterrupted for those 24 hours, who would it be and why?
when I've been asked this question before, or when I thought about this question before, like it was always Tupac. It was always Tupac. I always really respected his mind and his duality.
Mhm.
Because I feel that in myself as well. Like the duality, like the both sides. I feel like it's the yin and the yang. You know what I mean? I always respected the balance. You know, like there's like people that act too tough, and
Mhm.
it's like you're faking it. You know what I mean? You're trying not faking it, but you're trying to purvey something. You know what I mean? You're trying to show yourself as something all the time. You know what I mean? You're trying to, impress somebody, come off as something. But it's like nobody's really like that. You know what I mean? And then you have like how Tupac was, like he could be, like gangster here, but then he's also very caring and compassionate, you know what I mean? Cares about the community and stuff like that. And that's something that I really respected. And I would probably, yeah, and I'll probably say, yeah, if I had to, might be, personally, I would have to say Tupac, yeah, because I feel like he had a lot of wisdom. You know, I feel like he did have a lot of wisdom, a lot of inside knowledge. Um, and I feel like because I would watch his interviews all the time, and I remember he would say that when people asked him where he's seen himself in like 5 years, and he would say like, God give me back 5 more years. I see myself in my own political party. You know what I mean? Representing, like the people, the underdogs, like the blacks, the Latinos, stuff like that. And I think, I really believe that had he lived longer, you know what I mean, he would have seen stuff like that. You know what I mean? I feel like if Michael Jackson would have, lived longer, he would have, you know what I mean, overthrown, like, you know what I mean? Because he had, a very big heart and like pull like that, you know what I mean? A lot of people respected him.
Mhm.
So it would have to be, yeah, something. If not, you know what I mean? And then Jesus. If it's not, you know what I mean? Like, of course, like something like that. But that's, you know what I mean? I don't know how credible that answer would be. Like,
Nice, nice. So going into closing of the podcast, man, like it'll be a little bit uniquely different because you're an actual family member of mine, right? So anytime I interview someone, I give the microphone to them. The show becomes yours. You become the host of the show, and you have opportunity to ask me any question that may have came up during this episode. So, do you have any questions for me?
where do you get the energy to do all the stuff you do with your sons?
It just goes back to like what you were saying earlier about like instilling in him that there's always more. Like I don't want him to undercut. Prime example right now, like he could be a straight A student, but I know he's half-assing it. And so he wants to play basketball. And I'm like, you can't play basketball until your grades are at this level. And even if your grades are not at this level, they're probably not going to let you play basketball. So stop asking me for what you want and deliver on where you need to be for yourself before you go and have a good time. You got to establish your principles first. So for me, like, till my last breath, like that's my goal. That's my objective is to constantly keep instilling and working. I'll probably be 90 years old, what I'm saying? If, again, I think our family history, some people live to 100, some people live to 60. It's like, it's a toss up. So for me, until my last breath is to instill in him is that there's always more. Have fun while you're doing it, but be responsible for your actions in that entire process.
True. That's heavy. That's good. And how did you get into just this, like the podcast and finding entrepreneurs and all types of people like that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was just kind of like I've always had access to entrepreneurs. Like I always had a Rolodex because I've always been into like business and like whether it was graphic design or marketing or web design or whatever it was. But I didn't really think
Mhm.
about this as a vehicle until like I had that stroke back in 2018, and then like I woke up in the hospital and I was just kind of like, okay. And I've told this story like a million times, but every time I tell this story, it brings me back to that moment when I woke up in the hospital and I saw my son and I saw my parents, and I'm like, okay, I almost died. What was the legacy that I was going to leave behind besides, the clients that I had and the money that I had in the bank? I was like, okay, like what's the real legacy? What's the real tangible object that I can leave behind that will outlive me, outlive my son, outlive his kids, and outlive their kids? And I was like, I need to be able to communicate with those generations, much like, some people look at MLK, for example. And I'm not comparing myself to MLK. I'm just some people look at MLK, he's dead and gone, but they still reach out to that. Some people reach out to Bob Marley, right? Some people reach out to Steve Jobs. And every single person that you're talking to and communicating with, and I have opportunity to reach out to these entrepreneurs and affect them in some way or shape or form and help my family as well. then that's how I came up with this podcast, and that's why I named it what I named it, because the opportunity for me to leave behind breadcrumbs with my voice, of reasoning, communicating with people like you, talking about your journeys, and your journey is going to be somebody else's journey 100 years from now. It's going to be a kid just like you, probably in Queens, right, instead of Long Island, that may or may not have braids, that may or may not want to be a model, and they may have the opportunity to listen to this episode and be like, well, shit, his friends are telling him he couldn't do it. He said, fuck that, I'm going to do it. Why can't I, 200 years from now, do the same shit that Daniel did 200 years ago?
Respect, yeah. Legacy, man. It's a time capsule, man. That's I feel like that's really important. Like I really respect that answer and like those views. Like it's not about, like you said, like it's more than just how much you have, leave money in the bank and stuff. It's more of like how you're gonna be remembered, you know what I mean? Just being remembered, because I feel like that's way bigger in the world. Like you could, rich people die every day and people don't remember them, you know what I mean? But you remember that guy that gave you that good advice, you know what I mean? Or that guy, you know what I mean, that, that smiled at you when nobody else, you know what I mean? Just, just stuff like that. Like little things like that, it changes you, you know what I mean? It really helps others. You know what I mean? So it's really, paying it forward, giving back to the rest of the world, because like you said, they could definitely like learn from this, you know what I mean? Everything you do, that's good, man. It's a good heart. Good heart.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate you, man. I appreciate you, and first of all, I'm definitely proud of you, man. That's why I wanted to have you on the show, man. It was just an opportunity for me to kind of get back to say, you know what I'm saying? I see you doing your damn thing, Dizzle. You know what I'm saying? I'm proud of you. Stay on that path, man. Like you're level-headed as hell. And again, I mean, you're only 23, so the opportunity for you to go from 23 to 63, that's 40 years of this building and compounding on what you're building right now. You're starting so young, man. So keep on pushing, keep on striving, brother.
Thank you. Proud of you as well. Thank you. I have a lot of questions for you. You know what I mean? Thank you. Because you know what I mean? You're very, well-rounded. Like you got all the business to know. You know what I mean? Like when I did like a little survey, I was like, it was like, what, what you want to see on here or whatever. And I'm just like, good thing you did say, pick all that apply, because I picked like all, I think I literally picked all of them. I would want to learn how to, write a book. I would, how to, be successful. I would, have a mindset like that. Like, so all that stuff, you're very helpful. Thank you. I definitely appreciate you.
Yeah, I mean, you got access, bro. I mean, like I said, the bloodline runs long. Yeah. So, I mean, we just going to get on that communication pipeline a little bit more often, man. But I definitely appreciate you, man. I definitely love you, and I appreciate you being on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Great. S.A. Grant, over and out.